Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming on to the webinar. This is a webinar for the Round 14 Urban and Community Forestry Grants. So the first slide we're going to look at is the Urban and Community Forestry timeframes and numbers of the applications. There are 3 separate opportunities that contain the applications for the categories that you'll be applying for, and you will see what the categories are in the name of the opportunities. As you see down, like in the middle of the page, the UCF1 is the Inventory and Management Plans, UCF2 is the Planting and Maintenance Projects, and the Educational Programming is the UCF3. So when you're picking an application to fill out, you would click on the correct number of application, and it'll bring you right into the appropriate questions. So the application deadline is July 12th at 2 p.m. And I'd like to let you know that 2 p.m. is the final time that you can apply. Actually, the Grants Gateway will shut down at 2 p.m., so there are no exceptions to late applications. My recommendation would be to start now, go in the Grants Gateway and pull up the RFA first, and then get into the application and take a look at it, and you'll be, off to a good start. Questions are due to me at close of business Thursday, June 21st, and we will be posting the Q&A on the opportunity page. You'll see that page a little bit further on. And the awards will be announced, we anticipate, sometime in October, but we'll keep you informed. If you don't hear from us, feel free to call us about the announcement. So to start off, I'd like to show you a couple pictures or a few pictures of examples of projects or pictures that may give you an idea for a project that you may want to complete. The 2 pictures above were from a successful project done by one of our partners that applied for a grant a couple of rounds ago. This is a before and after picture. And then below are some pictures of possible maintenance grant situations that you may want to apply for a grant, or actually even for an inventory, new inventory, or a management plan. So the project types, you would go into the RFA and look at the different project types before you start your application and decide what type of project you'd like to apply for. And then when you do that, and you submit your application, the eligibility questions will be reviewed upon your submission, and then it goes to the evaluation process. If you pass all the eligibility questions, the program evaluators will be able to take over from there. We do recommend a detailed work plan this time, and the work plan is at the bottom of the application, but it may do you justice, or it may help you if you work on your work plan first, because a lot of the questions that you will be answering along the way, from top to bottom, will be relative to your work plan. So you may want to do that first in your work plan form that you can download and, outline that before you start the application. And then your cost effectiveness part, we have a couple of new questions this year and a couple of new requirements that would fulfill the cost effectiveness questions. And so when you're doing that, it'll help you to gain more points and be funded. So these projects, we would like to know how they will address and promote the quality of life in urban parks and streets, open spaces, habitat creation. All of these benefits that we have listed here are things that you should incorporate into your application and into your work plan. I'm going to get into the categories here. Tree inventory, they're projects that we encourage communities to have. We would love for every community in the state to have a tree inventory so that you know what it is that you have. It will help you to make those important decisions on how to manage your urban forest in the future. You can hire a consultant or do in-house work with your employees that you have on hand that are knowledgeable about trees. And in your tree inventory, there are requirements that you'll need to fulfill, so they're all outlined in the inventory section. But it would be helpful if you would describe this project with those environmental benefits that we have listed under the description of the tree inventory category. We do require that the inventory be captured on computerized software program. Doesn't matter to us what that is, but we would like your numbers, your figures, incorporated into the iTree system or another possible way where you could get a report on the environmental benefits of your inventory. Bring in partners. Our grant is largely interested in those partners in the community. And urban forestry is all about the people that are incorporated into taking care of the urban forest. So partners are very important. And we are going to require that partners do have a role in your projects so that you get the full points in the scoring. This is an example of two different pages from an inventory. The one on the left describes some of the trees and what was collected in the inventory, and on the right is an example of a tree inventory report, not with all of the items that we would like collected, but I would say that it's so small I can barely see it, but it is the numbers of those specific trees that were listed in the inventory. Now, our community forestry management plan is typically based on a tree inventory that a community has, but the forestry management plan helps those responsible for taking care of the trees in your community have a guideline of what should be done according to their plans for their trees, for their urban forests. So this document will help to elevate the community forest to a sustainable level. It'll make recommendations about what should be done to what trees. It provides a record and understanding of what exists and what those future goals are. And it also outlines a schedule of when the work should be done and priorities that you may face in your community, such as risk tree and how those trees should be addressed, also storm management and what you should do if you have a storm or some sort of infestation that takes out a large quantity of trees in your community forest. You can hire a consultant who's an ISA arborist, or someone in your community that has experience working with your trees. A management plan is extensive, as this slide says. This is an example of one, that some of the information that should be included in the management plan. We outline those things that are required, that we want to see in a management plan. There are several other things that could be unique to your community that you would like to include. If there's something that doesn't seem like it fits into our description of a management plan, feel free to call us and we'll let you know if that's something that we can fund. From time to time, there are extra items that communities like to include, but on occasion, those things are not eligible for our funding. So don't hesitate to call us if you have any questions. Tree planting grants are one of those feel-good projects that are very popular with our grant program. I'll get into the match later, but tree planting and maintenance has a match. Inventories and plans do not have matches. So tree planting is one of those projects that is, it's good to restore the canopy to your community if you have lost many trees due to an invasive or a storm. So that a healthy tree canopy enhances the quality of life of your urban forest in parks and along the streets. And when you're doing a tree planting grant, take into consideration the environmental justice or those underserved areas in your community. You can check to see, and typically you'll know if your community is an environmental justice designated community. But if you don't, we included a zip code link that will bring you directly to the census, and all those communities that have been designated as environmental justice will come up. That question is a two-part question, so don't leave it blank. For an underserved community, that could be a community that's lacking trees, that's exposed to extra exhaust leading to asthma, some other sort of environmental concern in that neighborhood, excess traffic, school buses at a particular time, tourism at a particular time of the year. That would be considered an underserved location in your town. So don't leave that blank. Look up on Wikipedia if you need to come up with some sort of information about your area so that you could fill something in for that underserved location section. No planting can be done on state-owned property. It can be done on private property within 10 feet of the right-of-way, and you'll see an explanation of that in the RFA. You must use non-invasive species. If you have taken down trees because of invasive species, that's a good thing. Have your tree list approved by a forester or an experienced professional, because we will not give you points for a tree list. Actually, we will deem you ineligible to have your grant evaluated if you do not include a tree list. So the tree list is very important. Upload photos of potential planting sites. They don't have to be those exact planting sites that you will be filling with trees, but we'd like to see the area, neighborhood, about why you need these trees. Also, a project map is required. And we would like to see the number of trees that will be planted in your project. Here are some pictures of projects where volunteers have been used. Partners such as this after-school group of young children, or a Girl Scout troop, I can't really tell what that is, but those are partners that are helping the project be completed in Cortland, New York on Arbor Day. In the city of Newburgh, that's a member of their Shade Tree Committee, helping the DPW mark those trees for removal. So that was probably a maintenance grant there in Newburgh, and the one over on the left, they're planting trees, so that was probably a planting grant. However, it could have been they were planting a tree for any kind of grant to kind of raise community awareness that a grant project is about to begin. So tree maintenance. Tree maintenance can include tree removal, pruning, stump removal, which could be very expensive at times, forest thinning, pest control management, which could include inoculations, removal of ash, for instance, in western New York, or young tree care, such as watering, installing tree guards, perhaps young tree training, could all be included in tree maintenance. For a maintenance grant, you need to include a copy of your inventory. If it's a large inventory, you could just include the pages of that area, such as in New York City, that's the 5 boroughs. All I would need to see is sections of that inventory that would be covering the area where the project will be taking place. And the inventory has to be less than 8 years old. Otherwise, it would be mostly invalid because of all the different things that could be happening to your trees over the past 8 years. And photos should demonstrate the need for the maintenance as well. It would help us evaluate your grant a lot better. If you will be using professional services, please indicate that so that we can give you the full points for that question. We are requiring 2 estimates this year. So if an in-house staff person or group of your staff will be completing the project, that would be, you'd have to give us your budget for those staff people, plus then you would need an additional estimate for the project. We're not asking for you to go out to an RFA or anything like that, a bid. We just want to know that you have contacted a professional or outside source to get another price. See which one is more cost effective that would be supplying you with the same finished product. We want you to compare the prices and give us the most cost effective one. Now, when we get into the questions and you're filling out the application, The first set of questions are your eligibility questions, and they are pass or fail questions. And all questions must pass in the application. And those questions include things like, have you supplied us pictures, or have you uploaded the map of the area? Have you, are you going to be planting on non-state land? Things that are typical questions. There's nothing difficult there. If you don't understand something, feel free to call us with that. If you fail the eligibility, if you fail one question in eligibility, we cannot evaluate your application further. So last time, round 13, we had a couple people that didn't upload their tree list or uploaded a number of pages in one upload section, and they overwrote each other. We'd like to let you know you must combine the PDFs in each section so that the PDFs don't overwrite each other. If there were two things you needed to upload, just combine them before you upload it to the question so that we see everything that we need that's required. I'll be honest with you, it broke our heart to see that some of our partners failed the eligibility. So we really would like you to take that little point, that tip, so that everybody will get the full points and be ready to be evaluated completely. So double check your work before you submit, and Jeff will get into that later on how you'll do that. It's easy to do. You'll be able to see your attachments and your answers to all the questions. The evaluation questions will come next. The eligibility questions are evaluated by one reviewer. The evaluation questions will be evaluated by 3 different reviewers in staff in central office. And then those scores will be averaged. Those scores will be added to the following group of questions. But watch your character count to understand the level that we are looking for, the level of information. So if there's a box that says 1,000 characters, you don't need to go into some thesis, to answer the question. If there's 500 characters, all we need is a few questions, a brief answer. If there's 5,000 characters, we're looking for a little bit longer. If you don't understand, what we're looking for, just give us a call and we'll help you with that. And think through your project first with, and incorporate your partners and what their roles will be into the work plan that you will be doing towards in one of the questions at the bottom. But like I said, read through the application and the questions first, because if you do, you may be able to outline your project initially in the work plan, and then you'll be able to answer your questions easier as you move through them. Here's a beautiful picture taken in Albany. I think it was a couple of springs ago. Tree planting grant. Now your work plan, as I said, will help describe your project, outline your project. And most of the information in the work plan will go into your contract. So if you map this all out, we'll be able to see who's involved, what they will be doing, and it's an overview of the project. If you address all the questions, outreach and education, the local needs, partnerships, long-term benefits, that will help you to answer the questions that come upon you earlier on. So there is a worksheet that you can work on first to iron out what it is that you're going to be looking to complete in your project. So if you do that first, you'll be able to breeze right through this work plan section and perhaps even cut and paste some of that work that you've already done, perhaps in Word or, like in a little note somewhere else outside of the application. Just cut and paste it right into the application, and you'll be on your way to finishing the application. So the cost effectiveness will be evaluated by 2 people and averaged. Please check your budget and the description of each project for eligible and non-eligible items. They're all described per project type in the RFA. The RFA is meant to be your instructions and your guidebook, and this time I think we did a better job of aligning the RFA with the questions that you will see in the Grants Gateway when you get to it. So everything in that project category that you will be, the type of project you will be completing should be right in one place. The project needs to be cost effective. You'll be judged on that. You'll also get some points for the Tree City USA. If you have filled out an application in the past, we are not requiring the Regional Economic Development Council alignment this time or the WMBE section this time. And just be aware that the match applies to planting and maintenance grants, and you will see that in the budget summary that gets described a little bit later on in the presentation. Salary this year has been designated to be 30%, topped at 30% of the total grant, and fringe is 30% of the salary for planting and maintenance. So there's no match for the other two categories. The educational programming also has a 24% match, and those salary cost effectiveness limits apply to that as well. So as I just mentioned, the RFA should address all the questions per category that you may have. The scoring details and explanations of what we're looking for in the questions are all in the RFA. This year we included a work plan. Work plan is a little tricky once you get into the application itself, but we gave you a good example for you to be able to envision what it is that you're shooting for. We also included minimum planting standards in the RFA and the list of the large communities. So the funding and project timeframes. We will have up to $2.3 million for this round of grants. It was provided by the Environmental Protection Fund. We will accept 2 applications per applicant. So if there's a nonprofit in your community applying that is separate from yours, let's say Syracuse is applying for 2 grants and Onondaga Cooperative Extension can apply for 2 applications as well. It's not just 2 applications from an area, it's 2 per applicant. You must outline your objectives, tasks, and deliverables, and the project should be completed within a 2-year contract term. We will allow an extension, but we prefer that the project be completed within the 2-year term. The extension is kind of a lengthy process that we would prefer to not offer, but we will. We can offer it if something happens and you can't complete it within that time frame. Applicants in large communities will be funded up to $75,000, small communities up to $50,000. The minimum is $11,000. Project locations completed on non-state-owned property, and it should be on public property, streets and parks. No private property such as parking lots or people's yards should be included in each project, in any of the projects. You must include a map of the project area, and last year we had an issue. We could not understand some hand-drawn maps, so this year we put in, please no hand-drawn maps. It makes it easier for the evaluators to get a handle on where the project will be completed. And as I said earlier, always upload a single PDF for each question. So if there's multiple letters of support that you have that you'd like to attach for partnership support, let's say, for instance, please combine them as one PDF first and then upload it for that question. Okay, so the match requirements I touched on earlier, but tree planting, maintenance, and education has a 25% match, and that would be over and above the grant request. If you request $50,000, your match is going to be $12,500 for a total project cost of $62,500, and $50,000 of that is funded by the grant. So you'll see examples of match under each category, what would qualify as match and what is ineligible for match. So this is a slide of a completed project at Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn. This was a maintenance project, some nice pruning cuts there. And what is down below in the lower right is an example of part of their outreach and education section. You get, I believe it's 8 points or 5 points for the education section question in the grant. And this was completed here by alerting the public about what's happening in the cemetery. And also there were several blog posts and website posts that went along with this, this project.
So the applications obviously are going to be handled through the Grants Gateway. This is New York State's system for managing grant applications, reviews, and eventually, and contracts and payments. So if you are awarded a contract, you'd be managing it and signing it electronically through the Grants Gateway. And many payments are now being processed through the Grants Gateway as well for contracts. So we do have a help desk. It's open from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day, weekdays, and you can email us or call us. And we also have a website to help you. So the website is Grants Reform. So it's grantsreform.ny.gov, and there's a Grantees tab there that will give you information and documents to help you along the way. I'll point that out. I'll actually visit that website in a few minutes when I get into the system. You can email us at grantsgateway@its.ny.gov, or email us here in Albany, 518-474-5595. On the website, there's also a calendar here at grantsreform.ny.gov/training calendar, or you would just click on the Grantees tab and then click on the training calendar. So if you're a not-for-profit or you're just registering, there are recorded webinars, there's webinars that are offered on a regular basis. Every Tuesday and Thursday we have webinars for pre-qualification, and then we have videos as well on the website about registration and pre-qualification. So, registration. All entities that wish to apply for grants in the state must be registered in the Grants Gateway. So you have to start off with filling out our registration form, and this is actually not an online process. So there's a form that you need to fill out. You need to print it out, fill it out, get it signed and notarized, and then mail it to us. So don't wait until the last week to do this, because obviously you got to deal with the mail and getting things processed before you start actually being able to apply. There's information about it on the Grants Reform website that I just mentioned, and also in the Grant Opportunity portal, which I will visit as well. So I'll point the registration form out when I get online. Pre-qualification. If you are a not-for-profit applying for a grant, you need to be pre-qualified. So pre-qualification is essentially a bunch of forms and documents that you need to provide or fill out for us, proving that you're a well-run not-for-profit. There's certain policies and procedures you should have in place, or that all well-run not-for-profits should have in place. So we need you to be pre-qualified by the due date, and that is July 12th at 2 p.m. It's something you need to get started on ahead of time. So we need about 5 days, we ask for 5 days for your pre-qualification application to be reviewed. There could be some times of back and forth if you have to fix something, so you do need to do that quite ahead of time. Don't wait until the last week to do that. So like I said, all not-for-profit organizations must be pre-qualified. The Grants Reform website has a lot of information about that. I'll point it out. When that due date comes and goes, 2 o'clock on July 12th, all not-for-profit entities need to be either in the status of pre-qualified or pre-qualified open. And if you're a governmental entity applying for it, you do not need to pre-qualify. Don't even worry about it. That's not something that government entities need to do. So it is important to understand the user roles in the system. The Grants Gateway is role-based, and it certainly might happen where you or somebody at your organization has more than one account to log into the system. That's just the way it's set up. And when you first send in your registration form, we create 1 or 2 users in the role of Grantee Delegated Administrator. And that is the person that can add or edit other user accounts and also work on pre-qualification, or what's called the document vault. So all entities, governmental and not-for-profits, will have this Grantee Delegated Admin to add or edit user accounts. So we leave it up to you to decide who's the person that can sign contracts, who's the person that can submit applications, who's the person that can only work on applications. And then if you're a not-for-profit, the additional thing that this person does is work on the document vault and get that pre-qualification taken care of. So once they're set up, they can set up anybody else. For instance, you might have somebody here in the top left in the role of grantee. This is somebody who can start an application, can save any changes in the application, they can work on the budget, the work plan, everything in the application, but they can't submit it to us. So when that due date comes, this is not the person you want to be logged in as. You need to be somebody here on the right, either the grantee contract signatory or the grantee system administrator. These people can do all the same things that the grantee can do, start an application, save the application, edit the application, but they can also submit it. So they can send it in before that due date in time. Grantee system administrator also has some additional administrator abilities. Essentially, it's kind of a hybrid between the grantee contract signatory and the grantee delegated administrator. So if you're a large organization and maybe you have multiple people working on your application, you might want to have one or several people in the role of grantee, and then one person as either the grantee contract signatory or the grantee system administrator to submit the application. If you're a small organization and only one person is working in the system, you'll need one of these people on the right. There's no need to add the extra grantee role. So again, you'll start with the grantee delegated admin role, or somebody will, and they need to create these other accounts. So just to highlight some of the things I just mentioned, grantee delegated administrator can add new accounts and work on the document vault, but cannot work on grant applications. So at the very least, you have to have somebody in that role that can sign a contract, or I should say sign and submit an application. That would be the grantee contract signatory or the grantee system administrator. That person in the role of grantee can work on applications but can't submit it. Maybe this is someone in the role of grant writer. And it is certainly acceptable for one person to have multiple roles and thus multiple accounts, multiple logins to get into the system. You can use the same email address, that's fine. You even set it up with the same password, but you do need to have separate accounts if you have different roles in the system. So what are the next steps? You have to first, after this webinar, what are you going to do next? So you have to make sure that your organization is registered in the Grants Gateway. I would get started with that first thing. If you're not, know your logins and know who needs to be logging in. If you're a not-for-profit, and we forgot to change this date here, but if you're a not-for-profit, make sure you are pre-qualified, or at least work to be pre-qualified before that July 12th date. So we said, you know, it says July 1st here. You have to have it done by July 12th, but you have to give it some time for us to review it. So do that as soon as possible. Also ensure that you have people in your organization set up with the right roles. Again, if you need somebody to submit an application, you're going to need someone in that grantee contract signatory role or the grantee system administrator. You certainly should download and read the RFA in its entirety. I'm going to look at it in a few minutes when we get into the system. I'm really going to skim right over it. You should have it downloaded, read, and have it with you as you're working on your questions and answers and as you're getting your documents together. And Mary had said, many applications are disqualified in eligibility questions because the applicant just didn't read the RFA. So don't be one of those people, please. If you do have questions, submit them to Mary. She will get them answered and posted to the website. Start your application as soon as you can. Submit your application as soon as you can. Don't wait till the last day. Don't wait till 1:57 and try to submit it. What if you had some errors that you didn't realize? So definitely do it, 24 or 48 hours in advance if you can. And note that you can certainly work on both your application and pre-qualification at the same time. They don't have to both be you don't have to have one done before the other. You can be simultaneously working on both, or maybe one person at your organization is getting you pre-qualified and somebody else is working on the application. That's fine. They just both have to be done by the deadline. Okay, so in the Gateway, you're going to be filling out an expenditure-based budget, and it's an itemized budget in the Gateway detailing project expenses. So itemized budgets should include budget detail and a narrative. You'll see there's two sections for each category. There's line items where you can enter in the actual item and the amount, and then there's a narrative where you can explain it in detail. We certainly want you to pay attention to cost effectiveness, reasonableness of expenses, and eligibility of costs, and that's at least 20% of the application evaluation. So it's important that you pay attention to that because our reviewers will be paying attention to that. And when we look at the RFA, you'll see that it does detail the eligible and non-eligible costs. This is just a screenshot of an example of a budget. You'll be entering in line items. You'll give it a name, justification. You'll put in the amount of grant funds. This one happens to be one where we put in match. So just to show you what the screens look like, I'll actually get into some in a few minutes. When you're putting in salary, it looks slightly different. You're going to fill out the position and title, the role responsibility, how many people are in the title, and then you're going to put in the amounts. It asks you to annualize the person's salary. So since you're going over 24 months here, you're going to be entering in for 24 months, it's how much does the person make in a year, not in 24 months. So I'll get into that as well when I get into the system. And then when you're done with your budget, or as you're working through it, you can look at the expenditure budget summary, which adds everything up. In my example here, I have no grant funds that I'm asking for in personal services, but I have some match. I've got some contractual items here adding up to $42,500. I've got some equipment, and I've got some other, and all that adds up to $50,000. So the work plan is the basis or story of the project. We provide you with a worksheet to help map it out so you can decide what your objectives, tasks, performance measures are. In the gateway, you can see down here in the bottom, you'll go to the forms menu, and in the pre-submission uploads, I'll show you that. That's where this worksheet is. You need to include proposed objectives, tasks, and performance measures, including desired project outcomes or deliverables. So again, an objective is the high-level goal. Tasks are the milestones along the way, or the the sub-objectives maybe, and performance measures are how do we measure that we've done it. It could be something quantifiable, like number of trees, number of people, number of outreach sessions, something like that. Could be dates, or it could be in paragraph form. And environmental justice, we want to make sure you include underserved areas if you can. There are a couple sections in the work plan. This is showing the work plan overview form, where you fill out the dates to and from. Obviously, yours will be 2018 through 2020. And then you'll provide a project summary. This is up to 50,000 characters, which is about 12 pages in Microsoft Word. So there's certainly enough room for you to explain in detail what your project is. You don't need to just write for the sake of writing text, but we want to know the details. Who's going to do it, what they're going to do, how it's going to be accomplished, things like that. Once you do the overview, there's the actual objectives, tasks, and performance measures. So you can have one or many objectives. Each objective can have one or many tasks, and each task can have one or many performance measures. You're left with a hierarchy of your project plan. So this is showing an objective, the objective name. This is showing task 1, the name, and then a description about it here. And it's showing performance measure 1 for task 1, the name, and then a example or narrative about it after that. Then there's a second objective and more tasks and so on.
So quality control is a new section of the RFA this year, the new section of the instructions. And we are requiring 2 estimates for each project application so that we can and you can be certain as to what the real cost of the project will be. You'll be able to score higher points under cost effectiveness if you supply those. Actually, I believe that's a requirement, so that's a pass-fail in eligibility questions, so please do that. An example of that, if you're using in-house staff, you would budget their time and their equipment and all that, and that would be one quote, and then a professional or an outside source to do the same project would be the second. The tree inventory goal from this grant forward will be, we're looking to have the outcome be 95% accurate. Of course, there's human error and all of that in there, but we need your inventory to be accurate. You don't want to be going out looking for the Asian longhorn beetle in trees and you're looking at an oak when it should be a maple on that street. So we really need an accurate inventory. The tree planting goal is 90% survival rate. We want to come out and inspect your project and have those trees be alive. So get instruction on how to properly plant the trees if you'll be doing them yourself, or be sure that your contractor is following protocols. If you need help, and if you want the forester to come out and make comments on how those trees are being planted, feel free to go to that forester list that we've made available to you, and they'll help you out during the process of completing the project. And those contractors that you select should have a proven track record and use a certified arborist where available to obtain the top scores. So read that section in tree planting and anything about professional services throughout the different projects in the RFA so that you can obtain the best score possible. Okay, so multi-partner and intermunicipal projects. These are encouraged, they're not required, but if a town and a village want to do a project together, that's fantastic. However, that one entity would be the lead applicant in this and would submit the application and also be funded the award monies for that project. And so you would outline that in your budget so that everyone gets paid properly. And then also, don't forget to include your partners on that multi-partner and intermunicipal project. Partnership letters must detail what their role in the project will be. And that's important for us to see that you're incorporating community members into your project.
So first of all, I just want to point out the grants reform website. That's at grantsreform.ny.gov. I mentioned that before. This is where you can go to this grantees tab here and get manuals and information to help you out. So on the top is the grants gateway information, and on the bottom left here is pre-qualification. We've got a pre-qualification manual. We've got a manual for maintaining pre-qualification once you've already been pre-qualified. Some FAQs, which are kind of old and out of date. We've got some links for registration, the grantee user guide, and some information to help you along the way. So that registration form is found in two places. One is right here. If I click on it, it'll open up this PDF. Page 1 is the page that you need to fill out. Page 2 is instructions and the address where you would send it to. So again, this is the one thing you're doing the old way, manually sending it through the mail. So give it time to get to us. Don't wait until the last week to do this. We do ask that you provide up to one or two people to be the delegated administrators. So these people, whoever you write here, will be the people that get the initial accounts and initial emails. Once we register you, you'll know because these two people will get emails, one saying this is your user ID and another saying this is your temporary password. Log in, change your password, and you're ready to go. So that's the registration form. The videos tab up here has links to videos that I mentioned before, how to register, how to get pre-qualified, and apply for funding. That's pretty similar to what we're doing here, so I wouldn't bother with that one. Also on the Grantees tab, one last thing is the training calendar. So that's up here in the top left, and this shows webinars that we have. We offer contract development. That's obviously down the road if you're awarded a contract, applying for a grant, and then at 11:30 on every Tuesday and Thursday is pre-qualification, helping you with any problems you might have with pre-qualification. Obviously, if you're stuck on something, just call our help desk and they'll help you out. So that's grantsreform.ny.gov. Now we're going to go to the Grants Gateway, which is grantsgateway.ny.gov. By the way, some people will Google or search for Grants Gateway, and they'll be brought to the Grants Reform website. And they'll think, well, where do I log in? So again, there are two different websites. There is a link right here that says click here to access the Grants Gateway. So that'll get you there as well. But in my case, you can, or in any case, you can type grantsgateway.ny.gov as well. Now, I wanted to just point out one quick thing here. A lot of people are in the habit of typing www before they go to a website. Don't do that with the state's secure websites because we don't have our secure certificates on www versions of websites. So if I went there, you can see it says it's not secure. I could continue if I wanted to, but not on the secure HTTPS website. So don't use www, just go to grantsgateway.ny.gov. Okay, and which is where I am right now. I'm not going to log in yet because I want to show you the portal. The portal is open to anybody as long as they have an internet connection to browse and search what's out there for grants in the state. I'm going to go backwards here and start with registration. So I told you there were two places for registration. One is on the Grants Reform website, or you can go here, click on that Request Access Now, and download the registration form right here. If you don't have what's called an SFS vendor ID, that's the state's statewide financial system, you'll also have to provide us with a substitute W-9 form. So that's explained in the registration form instructions, and it's also linked right here. So some entities, if you don't have a SFS ID yet, fill out the registration form, fill out the substitute W-9 form, and send that in to us. Once we get it, we'll set you up and set those accounts. So that's here under registration and request access now. Notification, you can sign up to be alerted of grants that are interesting to you or in a category that you might be interested in. You'd fill out your name and email address here and pick the category or categories if you want. And you would get an email every time, for instance, environmental supports was posted, a new grant was posted under that category. So that's what notification is here. And here we can browse or search for grants. So I'm going to search, but browse would show you a list of everything that's out there right now. I clicked on search, and for the urban forestry, I'll just search for the word forestry. So I'll type forestry and hit search, and you can see that there's 5 that are showing. 2 of them are old from previous years, and these 3 that are clickable are the ones that we're talking about here. We've got education, tree inventory and community forest management plan, and tree planting and tree maintenance. So it doesn't matter which one you click on, but I just want to show all 3 of them. If I click on this one, this is UCF1, which is the tree inventory and CFMPs, and it's got some information about it. This one is number 2, UCF2, and it's for the tree planting and tree maintenance. And then the third one, which actually is showing first, is the UCF3, which is the education programming. So I'm going to just read the details of UCF2, of UCF1, which is Tree Inventory and Community Forest Management Plan. So everyone has a unique grant opportunity ID. If you were to start an application for this one, your application number would be this ID dash a 5-digit number. So 00001, 00002, and so on. The agency who offers this opportunity, the full name of the opportunity, the contact name and email address we talked about. Then there's this solicitation profile. Gives a couple paragraphs of information about the grant opportunity. Mary talked about the size. They have to be between 11,000 and 75,000 for large communities, 11 to 50,000 for small communities. Talks about match and some other information here, and telling you which ones to apply for depending on the type of project you want. On the right-hand side is some more information about the announcement. For instance, the due date. We talked about that, July 12th at 2 p.m. Again, you can't wait until 2 p.m. to hit the button. You should really do it ahead of time. After 2 o'clock on that date, the application will disallow you, or the Grants Gateway will prevent you from actually submitting the application. It doesn't matter how far along you are, even a fraction of a second late, and you've missed the deadline. Again, we anticipate awards in October, awards to be announced at least. The contract length is 2 years, funding available $2.3 million. We talked about the sizes. We talked about the Q&A. So here's the email address again for Q&A. It's going to be posted as a link, and that link will be right here. Sorry, right here. So when we come back in a couple weeks, there might be some questions that have been answered by Mary, and you would click here and be able to read them. So the last date that she will be posting them will be on 6/21, but she'll be posting them periodically as a bunch come in. So you can come back here, search for the word forestry, and click on this link that would be here for the Q&A. This is just showing who these grants are for. Not-for-profits, governmental entities, and tribal organizations can all apply. Target populations, you know, what's this for or who's it for, and then service areas. This is what drives that email I talked about. If people had signed up for notification, if they signed up for government supports or environmental supports, they received the email letting them know when these were posted. So the last thing here is this view grant opportunity. This is the PDF of the RFA, the request for applications. So if I click on it, I can open up the RFA. You probably should save it. and we can view it. So we can see it's 45 pages. First page is the cover page here, again telling you the 3 types of projects and their IDs. There's that due date and time again. Quick introduction in the top, and talks about those dates that Mary went through as well. The webinars, which I assume most of you were here already because you're here on the webinar. The Q&A link or information email, phone number for our help desk, and email address for the help desk as well. And then the table of contents. So you can see it's grouped into a couple different sections. We've got eligibility and the grants gateway, grant opportunity general information, budget information, work plan, quality control, eligible project types. So if you need to know, is my project eligible, check out page 15, 16, or 18, or following all these up till page 21. Evaluation scoring criteria here. So this is a good idea to see what are you going to be judged on. Talks about payment and reporting. If you were to receive a contract award, how does that work? Right here in section 7, some more information about that. And then those appendices we talked about, a list of large communities, the recommended minimum standards, the sample municipal endorsement, so someone who was asking about that, that is here on page 36, and the budget and work plan guidance. So I'm not going to go through all these pages. You certainly should. I do want to skip through a few things here. So we'll go down to, again, this starting on page 9 here is information about the grants, kind of introducing it. I'm going to skip through here a little bit. Again, we talked about eligible project types. Eligible costs based on the different types of projects. And we're going to skip down to the section where we get into the actual questions. So section 4 here, application, evaluation, scoring, and selection, talks about how that works. Project location, work plan, and we talk about, let's go here a little bit more. So these sections, see section 5 for application review and scoring for a detailed assignment of points. So if we scroll down to section 5 here, this is how things are scored. So pay attention to this because, of course, when you're answering your questions and you're providing the information we ask, you should know what we're looking for and how you would be scored based on what you provide. So, for instance, for project location, if you were lacking because you did not adequately describe the project location but did include clearly labeled map or photos, you'd only get 1 point versus the max of 5 points. So we want to make sure that you're aware of what a good answer to a question would be. So it's all written down here in section 5. All right. I'm going to go down and get to the appendices. So Appendix 1, this is the list of all the large communities. So if you're a large community, if you're on this list, you can ask for up to $75,000. Appendix 2 is the recommended minimum standards. Appendix 3 is the sample municipal endorsement. So you could copy and paste this, put it into a Word document or something like that, or even print it out if you want, this 1 page, although it doesn't show 1 page easily. So I would copy and paste it, make it a Word doc. You could use this as something, as your template, to get your municipality to create this endorsement. And Appendix 4 is work plan guidance. There is information here about it, and there's also information in the Grants Gateway about it. I like what DEC did here because they told you what they want in this category or in this section, which is the work plan overview form, the summary. So address these things: project location, past performance, partnership, local needs, and so on. And then your objectives, tasks, performance measures. Here's an example. Here's an example of an objective, an example of tasks, and an example of performance measures. So I'm going to fill some out, and I'll use these as examples. Here's what it looks like when you actually get a contract or publish your application. There is the project summary. Again, that's all text. up to 50,000 characters. And here is a objective, tasks, and performance measures. So I'll go through and fill some of these out as well. So these appendices will help you get an idea of what we're looking for in your application. All right, so I'm going to minimize this and get into applying. So I'm going to log into our test system, actually, and start applying for this grant. So you would have gone to grantgateway.ny.gov. I'm going to a different location. You would click the login here in the top left, and I'm going to log in as somebody named Jeff Grantee. And I'll click on login. If you forgot your password, you could click that there and have it reset for you. So I log in, and I see the layout of the Grants Gateway screen here. All right, so first of all, on the top is kind of search opportunities. So I can search the Grant Opportunity Portal, which we just looked at. I can search for applications or contracts that my organization might have. I can search for payments. If we've submitted payments electronically, that means we would have had a contract. I could search for progress reports, because if you have a contract, you can enter in progress reports, quarterly or monthly reports. And I could look if there's any tasks for me or anybody else in my organization. So what's relative here for you is applications. I did one earlier today at 10 o'clock for a previous webinar. So if I went to applications and searched for the word forestry, I can see the one that I did. Actually, I started 2 earlier today. So that's what applications does. Again, these are all allowing you to search here. I've just clicked on home to go back to the home page. And maybe some user at your organization would want to do that to find the application you've already started. The black bar is reference. We've got training materials, linked to videos and manuals. Your organization, this is your organization that's set up in the Grants Gateway. Your profile, your personal profile, you could change your password or something on there, and then log out would obviously log you out. This blue bar changes based on the type of page you're on, if you're allowed to save or not. So whenever you're, I call this the action bar, because there'll be the ability to click the save button as you're working through your application. So the rest of the home page, there's a welcome, and it's showing you what role you're in. I'm in the role of grantee, and if you remember that, this is somebody who can start an application and save it, but I can't actually submit the application. So we'll have to figure something out about that. I can search for all opportunities that I'm able to apply for, and I can look at my inbox. Ignore the inbox. That is just a copy of any email you've received from the system, and it's really of kind of no value to you when you're working in grants. There would be a third section here. If I had any tasks assigned to me, there would be a My Tasks. And the moment I start an application, that will become a task for me, and we'll see it down here. So let's start an application. So you don't start the application by going to the portal and searching for it like we did before. You start an application by, from the home page, clicking on View Opportunities, and then searching for that full name or a keyword, for instance, the word forestry. All right, I search for forestry, I see those 3 that we talked about, and I want to do a UCF1 Tree Inventory and Community Forest Management Plan. So I click on it. This should look familiar. It looks like just the same way it looked in the portal, except this button now says I can apply for grant opportunity. Now, remember Mary said you can apply up to 2 times per entity. It's telling me that I already have 1 in process. It's actually not in process anymore. I submitted it, but that was because I did one earlier in our webinar this morning. So I can still apply for a second. I can click on Apply for Grant Opportunity, and it says, it actually gives you a little warning. That's just saying, wait a minute, you've already started one. Are you sure you want to start another application? And in our case, yes, we certainly do. So I'm going to hit OK. And I've now started an application, and you can see I am application number 18 for UCF1. So a couple new buttons appear. Menu is the home page we're on right now, called the application main page. Forms menu are all the forms that you need to fill out, which become your application. Status change is where I'm going to be able to submit the application. I can't, but somebody else with the right role can. Management tools, you can check for errors if there's something required you've missed, or we can add people to this application. Somebody at my organization I could add so they get a task. And you can ignore progress reports and related documents. That would be for if you were to be awarded a contract. So the only thing the application main page shows is an overview here, your title, the amount of grant funds requested, and the total project cost. So that stuff will be filled out along with everything else here in the Forms menu. I could hover on it and click on the pages, but instead, we suggest you just click on the word Forms menu and see the whole menu. So a couple pages are just for your reference. For instance, the first page here, Contract Document Properties, is just showing you what documents make up a contract. There's a sample master contract showing the state's master grant contract, and there's the attachment A1. That is the program-specific terms and conditions, and that can allow you to, that'll show you what the program has or what the state agency has, DEC, kind of what you're getting yourself into if you apply for a grant or if you receive an award. Application information, this is also nothing that you fill out here. You could print the application, we'll do that a little later. Here's the RFP again. Here's a link to some instructions that if you click on it, you can get into a little more information about how to fill out a budget and work plan and so on, things that I'll be doing in a few minutes. And then about 5 or 10 minutes after we submit our application, we'll have a PDF created here under application versions. So let's get into actually filling it out. And you start off here with project site addresses. So you can see the sections where you have to fill it out. Our program information, all those questions you have to answer are here. Your budget, the work plan, and the pre-submission uploads. There's also a section called grantee document folder where you can upload other documents that we haven't asked for. You know, if we didn't ask for it though, we really don't want it. So unless there's some compelling reason, you're not going to really do anything here. But we are going to fill out the rest of these other sections. So we'll start with project site addresses, and you just need to fill out your address. So I already typed some of this earlier today, so I'm just going to use the autofill. So your address, your county, your zip, and Mary mentioned before, we don't really need you to pick your regional council. That's the state regional economic councils, but you do need to pick the agency-specific region. And how do I know what region I am? Let me just pick one right now and hit save. So I've saved it. A couple things happen when you hit save. It gives you a green light and says the information has been saved if you filled out everything properly. If you missed something that was required, like for instance, the name description, which has a red asterisk, meaning it's a required field, if I hit save, it gives me an error. It says the project name description is a required field. So I don't lose anything on this page. I can leave, come back another day and fill it out, but it will never let me submit my application unless all of these errors, all these required fields have been taken care of. So I wanted to answer that question. How do I know what region I'm in, the agency-specific region? If we go back to the Forms menu and we go down to the pre-submission uploads, here is a template for the DEC regions. So I can click on this click here, and it's a document, a PDF, showing us the list of regions and how they're laid out. So you probably want to do that first. This is also where we have that work plan worksheet we talked about, and a sample municipal endorsement as well. So you don't have to take the one from the RFA, you can take it here if you would like as well. The work plan worksheet will look just like it looks like the last few pages that I showed you in the RFA. So that was the pre-submission uploads. So now we're going to get into really the meat of it, which is answering the questions in the program-specific questions. My suggestion to you is read these and answer them in a Word document or something like that. Take care of your grammar and your spelling and your word counts, and then you can copy and paste them in here. So you're going to have to give it a project title first. So this is my Anytown Forest Management Plan. And then here are the questions. And someone had asked before about the character limits. This is where you see the character limits. 250 allowed here, 1,000 allowed here, 500 allowed here. So you want to type your answers in Word or something and then check your character limits. So number one is your project type. What type of project are you applying for? And in this case, we're going to do a, where is it? A tree inventory, yeah. So tree inventory and community forest management plan. Okay. Easy enough. Project summary. Concisely summarize the work proposed and the project goals. So this is not your detailed project plan. This is just getting an overview of really what are you doing. So here is my project summary. Obviously, I'm not answering these for real. You'll be doing that on your own. If you're submitting multiple projects, we want you to explain how the projects differ from one another. So if you did have it, you would write how they differ. If you didn't, you would just write NA. I actually did one earlier today, so maybe I'll write, here is how they differ. And you explain it. There's a couple yes/no questions. So is your organization a governmental entity or a not-for-profit? If you said no, you're obviously not going to be able to apply. Are you proposing your project on state-owned property? So it's non-state-owned property. Projects that are not permitted on state-owned land to be eligible. So is the proposed project located on non-state-owned property or alongside a state-owned roadway in a city, town, or village? So yes, you should be answering there. And projects that are already receiving funding from other New York State or federal assistance programs are not allowed. They're not eligible to apply under this RFA. So you should be answering no for this. You should not have these projects being funded from other sources. All right, so then you're going to go in and answer these questions verbally or in text and in some cases with uploads. So in this case, this is the municipal endorsement. So you might want to answer something here, and you might want to attach the endorsement. If there's more than one, combine them into one PDF and attach them here. So I would click Browse. I'd go find it on my computer. I just have a sample one here. And you should hit Save periodically. Don't go through this whole page and not hit Save. Do it every 5 or 10 minutes or even every upload. And let me show you what happens when you do an upload and when you save a partially complete page. So you can see it found, or I browsed and I attached the file, but it's not attached until I hit the word Save, or the button Save. And it gives me a whole bunch of errors. Why do I have errors? Because I didn't fill out a whole bunch of required questions. But that's fine. It's saved what I've done up to now. It's saved up to page, up to question 7. And I can see the file that I've uploaded. It's not here. It's right here under View File. If I was to click on it and open it up, I can see this sample attachment that I attached, and I say, yep, that's the one I intended to attach here. So I don't have to do this all in one sitting. You can log out up here, come back, and start it again, or pick up where you left off. So if I did that, I would be back to my home page, and now I have a task. I didn't have one before, but if I click on Open Tasks, I can see, yep, that's application number 18 that I started a few minutes ago, and I can click on it and get back into it. So I'm going to go back to program-specific questions and continue answering these questions. I'm not really going to even read them. I'm just going to copy and paste. Here's my answer. So if I forget something, like here's the map, it's going to give me an error because I have a required red asterisk there. So I'll put in an attachment. I'll do some answers here and some uploads. Time frame will be completed within the 2 years. Now we get to number 14 here. This is one that you're not going to be evaluated on. We should have included a portion to allow you to attach an attachment in your answer, and we didn't. So don't worry about this. It can be yes or no based on the type of project you are, but you're not going to be held accountable for not uploading something here. Number 15, 16, I'm going to put in some answers here. Obviously you can see here's one that's longer, and as I put in more words, it's counting the characters I've used. So when Mary was saying before, you know, we do want you to be a little more verbose here in 17 than you were in number 16. Okay. Is it a Tree City, USA? Do you have a community forest management plan? If you do, attach it. Work plan review. Have you discussed the work plan and cost effectiveness? So the last question is about the work plan. Now, I'm not going to enter or answer question 23. let's say that I forgot to answer it, or I'm just ignoring it for whatever reason, waiting till later. So I hit save, and it gives me only one error now saying we forgot question number 23, which I know. Let's ignore that because I want to show you later on when I'm ready to submit it what happens when you submit an application that isn't complete yet. All right, so let's go back to the Forms menu. We did the first section here. We know we have an error. We'll just ignore it. And we're going to fill out our budget. So I have a couple items that I want to fill out, a couple contractual and an other expense. So what I'm going to do is fill out the contractual lines and then the narrative as well. Narrative will explain in detail what you're asking for, and the contractual will be the actual line items I'm putting in here. All right, so I'll click on contractual, and I'll give it a name. Hire consultant for the development of a citywide community forest management plan. Oops, I wanted to do something else first. I wanted to do hire this one first. Doesn't really matter, but hire a consultant to conduct phase 1 of the tree and planting site inventory, and then a justification. You need to type in the justification as well. And then the amount of money you're asking for. In my case, I'm going to ask for $18,000, and I'll hit save. So that was the blue bar up here where the save button is. Now that I've actually saved it, it gives me not only a save button, but actually an add button as well. So if I click on add, I can add a second contractual line item. And this will be hire consultant for the citywide CFMP. And here's my justification for that. And for this one, I'm asking for $15,000. And I'll hit save. So now I've entered 2 items for contractual. I can enter more just clicking on add. I can see what I've entered now that I have more than one item by clicking on this drop down and hitting go. I can also see how it all adds up down here in the bottom. So you can see this category total summary. If I click on that, it'll allow me to open up a Excel spreadsheet where all those line items I've entered, obviously I've only entered 2, I can see how they add up, and I can verify. I probably have some document somewhere where I've already written these down, and I can say, oh yeah, I missed one, or yep, this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted these 2, and these are the right totals or the right numbers for them. So it's just a way of you confirming if you've put in a whole bunch of items what you really have and how does it add up. So that's good enough for contractual. I've done 2 items. We'll go back to the Forms menu, and I do want to fill out the contractual narrative as well. So here's the 2 items I put in for contractual. Let's go to the narrative and explain, more in detail of what I'm asking for, who's going to be doing it, and so on. So you would write something a little more than just that, and you would hit save. Again, you've hopefully written it in Word already, and you'll just paste it in here. All right, so I've done contractual, and I have something else for other. It's going to be in the category of other. So it's not equipment, it's not travel, it's not salary, and I'll just go to other and put in for, what did I have? Public outreach. My justification, and this is $2,000, and I'll hit save. Okay, we'll go to the Forms menu, and I'm going to go to the narrative for other and explain that public outreach. All right, so I'll explain that and hit save. Realize that these narratives are not required by the gateway, but DEC is requiring them. They want you to fill them out. So make sure that you are filling out the narratives as you go through your applications. All right, so I've put in a couple items here. What does it all look like? If I go to Expenditure Summary, I can see how everything adds up. So I had $33,000 in contractual, 18 plus 15, and another 2,000 in other, adding up to $35,000. Let's say I'm a small municipality. This obviously is within the limits. It's above 11,000 and it's below 50,000. So I could have gone right up to 50, but in my case, that's all I had was this 35,000. So my budget looks good. Now, the last section here is the work plan. And we talked about the overview form and the objectives, tasks, performance measures. So we'll start with the overview form. And you've probably, hopefully by this point in the application, not this point of the webinar, have written your project summary. You've got it in Word, you've got it edited, and it's concise yet detailed, and you've got it ready to go, and you can just copy and paste it in here. So your work plan summary, let's say it's 10/1/2018 to 9/30/2020, 2-year period. And then what is your project summary? I'm just going to take one from that PDF we looked at. So I'm going to copy this one. This is 2 pages. I'm just going to copy the first page. Oops, let's go here. All right, so let's say we had it in Word and we pasted it here. All right, so that's 2,300 characters. You don't have to get up to 50,000 characters here. That's a lot, but it is providing you with a lot of space to really explain your project. Organizational capacity. This is you explaining what your organization can do and why you're able to do it. You have people that are qualified, or you're hiring people that are qualified to actually do these types of projects. Okay, so you'd fill out these pages and you would hit save. Again, it's probably easier to have copied and pasted them from a Word document. All right, so I'm done with that. Now I can go on to objectives. And you notice in this case, I'm just hovering over the Forms menu and clicking objectives. So I can start with my first objective, and I'm going to go back to the PDF and copy what we have here. And I'll do this one, prepare a community forest management plan. All right. So that's the objective name. You don't need a description for the objective. Feel free to type it out if you want to, but if this was ever to become a contract, even if you type something in here, it would not show up. So we'll hit save on that. And now I've got 2 options here with objectives. I can click on add and add a, hold on a second. I can click on add and add a second objective, or I can go to the Forms menu and go to Tasks, which is what I've just done, and I can now add a task for the objective Prepare Community Forest Management Plan. I'm going to go here and grab a task. Let's call it Prepare Management Plan. And the description is, consultant will prepare a forest management plan that will contain at minimum the following items. Okay, so I can copy and paste that. You can see I'm getting close to the 1,000 characters there, but I'll hit save. And maybe you wanted to work, you could separate them out if you wanted to. That's fine as well. So I did objectives and tasks. Now if I hover over here, I can do a performance measure. So a performance measure based on the objective, prepare community forest plan, and task, prepare management plan. What is a performance measure name? So if I go down here, the name is the management plan, and the details of it, or the narrative, are the consultant to submit hard copies, and so on, and I'll paste that right there. Now you can see we can accept an attachment if you want here, not in as a replacement for this, but if you want to give it as more information. It's not going to ever end up on a contract if you were receiving a contract, so it may be redundant or maybe unnecessary, but we do have a place to upload here. So I've done 1 objective, 1 task, and 1 performance measure. What if I had another performance measure for my first task? I could go back to tasks. I could click, this would be adding a second task. If I had a second task for this one, or I could go back to performance measure and click add and add a second performance measure. And add a second narrative and hit save. So now I have 1 objective, 1 task, and 2 performance measures. I could go back in the hierarchy here, up to tasks, and add a second task. Or I could go back even further to objectives and add, by clicking add up here, a second objective. So realize the hierarchy here. You're clicking on the Forms menu or hovering over it to get from one item to another, and the end result will be potentially multiple objectives each objective with one or multiple tasks, each task with one or multiple performance measures. All right, so I only did one, but you can imagine how clicking Add would allow you to keep doing more. So let's go back to our Forms menu. And the last thing was that pre-submission uploads. Again, there's nothing you need to provide us here. These are templates for you, the regions, the work plan worksheet, and the municipal endorsement. All right? So I feel like I'm done with my application. We know I'm not because I forgot to answer one question here. But we're going to send it and try to submit it and see what happens. Now remember, I can't submit it because I'm in the role of grantee. So let's remind ourselves, I'm in the role of grantee, and my application is in application in process. So I could tell my supervisor or whoever's going to be submitting it, the grantee contract signatory, I could tell them to log in and search for applications, or I could be a little more proactive with it and actually give them a task. If you go to Management Tools and Add Edit People, you can give other people the task just by checking their name and hitting Save. Now, Barbara Signatory, when she logs in, she'll have a task. So you don't have to do that. That just will save them a couple extra clicks and save them from having to search in applications. So I did that. Now I'm going to log out and I'll log in as her. So Barbara logs in and she notices she's got a task. She's actually got 2 of them and she could get started on them. Or she can access it. So again, she could click on applications and search for the word forestry. And remember, we were working on number 18, so that would be this one. She could click on and access it. Or she could go to home, and since I gave it to her as a task, go to my tasks and click on that one. This was number 18, so I would click on that. So it looks exactly the same to her. She could go in and answer questions or fix things, or if she noticed this problem, take care of that. But let's pretend we don't notice that problem, and we're going to just review our application. If I click on Print Application, once to print it, I'll just hit Cancel. I can see everything that I've entered. Here's the address. I picked Region 4. Here are my answers to the questions. So question number 1, number 2. Some of them had attachments. Remember, number 7 had an attachment. So it says that I have an attachment here, but it doesn't actually let me click on it. You do want to go back here, and go back to program-specific questions, and if you want to double-check, make sure you attach the right things, click on View File and make sure that that worked. The system will not create an application PDF for you if you attach a secured PDF, one that's password protected or secured. So you want to double-check with that and make sure that it works. But again, I'm going back to the preview here and looking at all the things that I've entered into my application. Then it goes in and shows me the budget. Here's the salary section, which I didn't do any. Here's contractual, so there's the phase 1 consultant for the inventory. Here's the second one for the CFMP, and so on, the different items of my budget. And then finally that budget summary, which adds everything up to that $35,000. Then I get to the work plan, there's the summary. And here's my objectives, tasks, and performance measures. Remember, I had 2 performance measures, so here they are. And then any uploads that I provided, of course we didn't, but that would be right here. So again, that is from the Forms menu and Print Application. So again, I'm going to pretend I don't see this error. Let's go, and we think we're done. We're going to now submit our application. That's easy enough. You just go to Status Changes, hover over it, and click on Apply Status of Application Submitted. So I click on it, and it says, wait a minute, question number 23 requires a response. So it does that error check there and looks for anything that was required that you missed. So this is why, one of the reasons why we say don't wait till 1:58 to try to submit it, because what if you miss something like this and you then run out of time to fix it and submit it again? So I'm just going to click on it. I'm going to scroll down to question 23 and say, oh yeah, I forgot to answer this. Here is my answer. And I'll hit Save, and that should satisfy that issue. So I'm going to submit it now. Let's just remind ourselves, we're in the status of application in process. So once I submit it, it'll change the status. I'll go to status changes and click on apply status for application submitted. It makes me read this agreement and agree to it. Yes, I'm allowed to submit on behalf of my organization. I didn't give my password away, something like that. And I click on I agree. Give it a few minutes or seconds to process. There we go, it just processed. And my application's been submitted. How do I know that it's been submitted? A couple ways. Number one, we go to the details here. Now it's in a different status, assignment of reviewers. I've submitted it to the DEC, and they're going to give it to reviewers. I also don't have it as a task anymore. If I go home, remember she had 2 tasks. Now she's only got 1. And application 18 is not one of them there. I can still search on it though. I can go to applications and search for it. And I can see number 18, that's in that status of assignment of reviewers, and I can click on it. I can't make any changes now because I've submitted it, but I can look at it. And finally, the last way of knowing is you'll get an email. About a minute or 2 later, you'll get an email that says, congratulations, you submitted your application, and it'll give you the application number. All right, so I've got some questions that came up. I'll answer those. I want to do one more quick thing, and that is show you how to enter in match. And I actually did it already this morning, so I'm just going to show you the one I started this morning. I started another application right here, UCF2 number 15, for tree planting and tree maintenance. And this is one that allows for or requires the match. So if I go to Forms menu, and let's just take a look at what I have here. I have some salary, and I filled out the position name and the person's name. I wrote their role responsibility. One person, they make $60,000 a year. We're funding them for 24 months because it's a 2-year project, and I'm asking for $12,000, and I have a match of $12,000. What if my match was only $10? Just want to show you what happens to the calculations. So I'll go to Forms menu, and that was salary. I could also go to Fringe. Remember, Fringe is 30% of the salary, which is maxed at 30%. So I can fill it out here, Fringe rate of 30%. 3,600 is 30% of 12,000, so I can do that. If I go down to Expenditure Summary, wait a minute, I've got an error here. What's the error? The error is that my match isn't 25%. It's only 18% because I have only a $10 match here in grant funds. So I had to put in some contractual, $40,000, and I had $10,000 match. But my budget, my salary, I don't have enough match for that. And it's giving me this error because over the whole application, it adds up to 18%, not the required 25%. It'll never let me submit this application unless I rectify this error. So if I go back to the Forms menu and back to salary, let me fix that $10, change it back to $12,000, and hit save. And now, if I look at my expenditure summary, the error, just if I hit save, the error will go away. And it did. And that's because now my match adds up to 39% of my whole budget, which is, of course, higher than 25%. So I wanted to show you that last little bit that the types of applications that require match, how that works. You would go into it, you would fill out not only the amount you're asking for in grant funds, but also the match funds that you have. And then when you do have match funds, we need you to explain it to us by going to the match worksheet and filling out one or several match worksheets. And a worksheet is simply just what is the source, the description of the source, and how is it documented, and what's the amount. If you had a match of 10,000 and 5,000 and 3,000, you would have to do 3 different ones by clicking the Add button up on top. All right? So one last thing is that application PDF. Hopefully it's been submitted by now. It's been submitted and it's been 5 or 10 minutes, probably 5. And let's see if the application PDF has been created. I'll go back to my application, go to Forms menu, and I can see at 3:48, or 3:38, so 3 minutes ago, the application versions was created. If I click on it, and I look at this PDF right here, this is one nice document showing everything that I've done for my application. This is what DEC will be looking at to review my application. There's a cover page, what's my project name, what's my organization's name, how much is it for, $35,000. Page 2 is who submitted it and when. Page 3 is where the address is. So there's my address, 123 Main Street. Questions start here on page 4. Let me just minimize it a little bit. So here's my answer to number 1, to number 2, and so on. You can see, obviously, it's nice and easy for them to read. Now I get to question number 7, and my answer, but then there's also the attachment. Where's the attachment? After the questions, you'll find the attachments. So they're all grouped together. So there's another attachment, a third one, a fourth one. You know, here's a longer answer I put in. And here's my attachments. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then it goes on to the budget. This should look familiar. There's the roll-up and the individual categories. Here's my 2 items for contractual. The justification and the narrative that I filled out. So there's always a page for the line item, the justification, and the narrative. Okay, then it goes on to my work plan. There's my work plan overview form, that up to 50,000 characters, and my objective, task, and performance measure 1, and performance measure 2. And that's the end of the application, while the organization capacity is the last one shown. All right, so that's the whole procedure. At the end, you'll have this, and you'll know that this is what the DEC is looking at.